Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Wood from Drafted Digital. I am the Director of Author Relations. Uh, really happy to be talking to you today about international markets and indies. It's something that we decided strategically we were going to focus on this year, and it's a really exciting area. There's a lot of reasons why I think now is a great time for indie authors to start paying attention and start working on their international presence. A little bit about Drafted Digital. We are a company that helps authors self-publish. We have a variety of tools that will help you convert your manuscript into a beautiful EPUB if that's something that you need. You can also upload an EPUB if you already have one, and we'll help you distribute and manage your books at a wide variety of sales channels. Currently, we submit books to Apple, Barnes& and Noble, CreateSpace, Kobo, Page Foundry, and Scribd and Tolino. And I'll talk a little bit more about Tolino later because I know there's probably a lot of you who aren't familiar with them yet. We currently are managing 46,000 roughly books and work with about 13,000 authors. One of our choices is that we want to make sure that authors get to choose exactly what sales channels they go to. We never opt anyone into anything. You get to choose. I want my book to go to Apple through Drafted Digital, but I don't want to get a Barnes and Noble. You get those options, and as we add new sales channels, we'll make you aware and let you know a little bit about the sales channel, and you get the option to choose to opt your books into that sales channel or not. In doing some of the research for this talk, I started looking back at our 2014 numbers. I was interested to find out that about 69% of our sales were from the US, but the remaining 31% were all outside of the US. Particularly strong was 11% of our sales were in Australia, which we found has a very similar taste to American taste as far as books are concerned, which that kind of surprised me. Like I wasn't sure. I was kind of expecting the UK to be a little bit higher than Australia, but it turns out Great Britain is our number two or our number three at 8%, and then Canada at 7%. Then behind that, you get several of the other English-speaking countries like New Zealand, Ireland. They're all less than 1% currently. We don't have a lot of data yet for 2015, but so far what we have for January and February does show about the same breakdown. It's something we're really wanting to continue to work on and grow our sales in those different markets. So, first thing I'm going to talk about is where is my ebook now? Like, if I'm an author, chances are you haven't spent a lot of time looking at where all the different storefronts take your book. Well, if you're on Amazon and just exclusively Amazon, they have 9 country websites other than the U.S. So you're in those 9 markets or 10 markets. Google Play has about 50 international stores. Apple has about the same at 51 territorial stores, that they call them. Like what we found is Apple is very strong in Australia, and so those have been really good sales for us. There is the Tolino Alliance, which the Tolino Alliance, there's not like a website that you'll find out there called Tolino. There is a device, their e-reader device, similar to a Kindle, is called Tolino, but it's an alliance of a bunch of German bookstores that have digital storefronts. So in their physical stores, they sell the device, and then you can buy from a wide variety of stores like Thalia.de, Bowl.de, a couple of other different storefronts. You can buy books. They're very, very strong. One report says that they are a little bit ahead of Amazon in Germany. So we've been excited about being able to offer them as a new sales channel. They have about 17 different digital bookstores that are mostly in Germany and then some in the surrounding countries. Kobo probably has the largest reach with They claim to have about 190 countries that they can distribute to. They do that both through their own website, and then also they have a lot of different strategic partnerships. Um, you will find that you might distribute a book to Kobo, and it might end up in a couple of different other web stores that are in Africa or in a one of the, I'm trying to think of a different country, like the Philippines or somewhere like that. Um, there is Flipkart, which is one of the biggest retailers in India, and they sell ebooks. Right now, subscription services, Scribd and Oyster are both primarily focused on U.S. However, they do. Oyster has said that they plan on expanding internationally, and I wouldn't be surprised if Scribd does as well. There's also several regional players. Um, they're a little bit smaller, but like Bookmate, 24 Symbols, Movifo. Uh, and so you'll hear about those, and there's just things, those are companies that we're looking into. Um, the subscription model is rising. Right now the terms are really good for authors, and so we think we'll continue to see that grow throughout the world. Um, Barnes and Noble, you end up they have a big presence here in the U.S. and then they've got a website in for the U.K. That's going to be their primary areas. They haven't expanded as much as some of the others, although they've also talked about expanding more internationally. And that's most of the major players. There are still a lot of traditional bookstores that have digital storefronts. You hear about a lot of them in the UK, for instance. For the most part, their digital sales aren't particularly strong, or you reach them sometimes through partnerships with Kobo. Um, that's about all you need to know about that, really. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should I go international? Well, from my research, what I've found out is that uh, most of the ebook adoption for the world has taken place in the U.S. so far. There's a lot of room for growth. I think I've seen numbers that say somewhere around 30% for U.S. adoption, with most of the other countries being much, much lower right now. Really, really neat thing about digital books is that they take away a lot of the logistical problems that existed before of going international. Before you had to have a physical book, getting everything to the warehouse, getting different. You only have so much space in a physical bookstore, and so convincing a bookstore in the UK to, carry your book might have been very, very difficult. If not, it just didn't happen very often. Um, Nowadays, you know, digital storefronts are virtually unlimited. You don't have to worry about shelf space or warehouse space, getting a book anywhere. It's all just out there in the cloud and the internet. That's a funny phrase, in the internet. We firmly believe that digital sales are going to continue to increase. We believe that it's going to overtake physical sales. You know, we think we're going to see a very books aren't going away. Physical books, they will coexist. But I believe, like the CD, you'll see a lot more people using the digital equivalent in the future, and we'll have some. There's types of books like children's books that lend themselves towards being physical objects more so than digital objects. But by and large, we believe that we will just continue to see a growth of the digital market. Um, Kind of a neat thing that we found was that Michael Cater of Publishers Lunch pointed out that in a 2012 report from the American Association of Publishers, uh, their book sales had continued to increase. Nearly all the revenue increase was from the export of ebooks, which rose in dollar sales by 63%. In a recent report from Cisco, the computer networking company, they they've said that their traffic forecast for data goes up from right now it's at 4.3 billion people have access to data, and that's going to be like cell phones, it's going to be people with computers on the internet, stuff like that, to 5.2 billion mobile users by 2019. So we're going to see some huge growth in the amount of people who are connected and able to purchase digital products. Um, in that growth that they're predicting, North America is a really, really small chunk. Like for the most part, it's going to be international growth. Another reason why you should go international and go wide is the traditional publishers are all moving that way. Digital Book World reports that HarperCollins is now actively looking to acquire international companies and gain their content because they see such strong growth, especially with their Harlequin purchase recently. Um, the Simon Schuster CEO, Carolyn Reedy, at Digital Book World 2014 said that international is where their company expects to find the greatest growth in digital sales. They said that in 2013 they sold ebooks in 200 countries, and so these are people who obviously are great at selling books, and they're looking at that international market and starting moving that way. Another reason is Novelists Incorporated, which is a association for authors who all have a proven track record of lots of sales, has chosen for their 2015 conference also to focus in on international markets, and so they're going to have a lineup of speakers really talking about the complexities of going international, the risk and the reward. And so a lot of really, really smart people are starting to move that way towards how do we capitalize on these new opportunities that digital affords for making one book and selling it everywhere in the world. So those are all the reasons why I think you should go international and go as international as you can. You never know where you're going to find your readers. You now have the opportunity to get your book in front of nearly anyone on the planet who has internet access. And so, we will continue to see people, that number grow, and it's just opportunity. How do you go worldwide? How do you go worldwide? Well, it's pretty simple. Like it's not a difficult thing to do. Really, you can work with a distribution partner like Draft to Digital. In some cases, you have to if you are an international author from the U.S. Like, if you're from the UK or one of the countries, there are some of the retailers that only work with U.S. With author accounts from the U.S. And so you have to go through a company like Draft to Digital to set up your book with them. In other cases, there are several of the retailers where they have their own do-it-yourself portals where you can go ahead and list your books. They all have kind of controls that you can use to manage your books on the international markets. For the most part, you're probably focusing on the U.S. market still right now, but they do have some things out there that you can use to control, like prices. For instance, Draft to Digital has territorial pricing, where we allow you to set your price in whatever currency you choose. We have some authors, especially Australian authors, who will set their price slightly higher than the conversion rate would have been because the Australian book market supports higher book prices. You can also, you know, you can set it a little bit higher for the euro if you're concerned about VAT, and I'll talk about VAT a little bit later. Um, it just kind of gives you a lot of options. Um, Probably the trickiest part about going worldwide is going to be the tax situation. If you're not in the U.S., you will need to look into tax treaties that your country has with the U.S. because if not, then everyone has to withhold like a 30% of the royalties to pay U.S. taxes. Well, if you've got from a country that has a tax treaty, it's much, much less than 30%. And that generally entails filling out some forms like the W-8BN and sending them to the company. If you work with a distribution partner, you just have to send it to them, and they kind of take care of the rest with all of their downstream partners. So what you should know about publishing internationally and some of the things that go on with that. That, like I mentioned earlier, there were some big changes in Europe that occurred this last December, like at the very end of the year, where previously a lot of retailers had based their operations out of a country in Europe that had a very low tax rate for ebooks. So it really, that price wasn't passed on to consumers very much. Now the laws have changed, so that doesn't happen, and the tax is based on where the consumer is that buys the product. How that affects you is, in most cases, the price that you send is going to be VAT inclusive. So it's going to be like, if I set my price at €2.99, it's going to show up as that, and that's what the consumer is going to pay. Well, the tax is going to be taken out of my cut of the royalties, and so it's something to be aware of. It's going to make your royalties slightly different. If you're a U.S. author and you are selling your book internationally, keep in mind that conversion rates are going to cause your royalties to be slightly different all the time because conversion rates are always changing, and so it can make reading your royalty statements kind of a pain, kind of confusing. But just keep in mind, every at the end of the month when we get paid from our distributors, it goes through a conversion process, and it's going to be different every time. Check with your retailers. Some of them are let you set the price VAT inclusive. Draft Digital sends everything VAT inclusive. Some of them go ahead and they send your price, and then they tack on the tax afterwards. And so it's kind of important to know, so just so you know, am I paying for the tax, or is it being passed on to consumer? It's confusing. It's confusing for everyone involved, but hopefully, there are a lot of movements where people are trying to get changes to the laws. So we'll all hope that kind of works out well in Europe. Something else you should know about publishing internationally is all of your rights are based on, are per territory. And so you might be a traditional author right now, and you might want to look at your contracts and see, did I give the publisher international rights, or did I just have U.S. rights, or did I just have U.S. and Canadian rights? Because you might be able to publish your book with rights to foreign country, go ahead and publish it in other places, and just make sure that you restrict it from publishing to the U.S. and the places where you sold the rights to. It gives you more opportunities. I've talked to several authors who are in that boat where their contract is just for the U.S., and so they can sell their book everywhere else that they want to. Likewise, I've talked to, we have a wide variety of authors who have sold their foreign rights for a certain territory. Drafted Digital, we don't have that exposed in our user interface. It's kind of complicated, but you can contact our customer support, and we can set up a book to restrict it from certain territories, or restrict it to just a certain territory, like if you had U.S. rights but you didn't have world rights. Um, so something to be aware of. It's a potential place where you can sell your book in more places, even if you are traditionally published. Or I'll talk a little bit later about selling your rights because it's another opportunity you have. One of the really cool things, uh, you know, I will assume everyone here who's paying attention to my vlog, as it were, uh, speaks English. Otherwise, you're probably really confused. Uh, as an English speaker, English is spoken in as the first language by about 375 million people. These statistics come from the British Council. Put all this together. I'll share some links at the end of my sources for a lot of these different points. Um, English is also spoken as the second language by about another 375 million people. So 750 million people speak English, which is huge. So that you have the opportunity to sell to all these people just your English book. Um, but there's also a market for translated works. One thing that we weren't sure about, we were curious about when we started distributing to Tolino, was how big of a English market there was. We've had done the research and looked at Germany had a market for English works, and so we just wanted to try it out. We also do carry a lot of books in foreign languages. We found that for the most part, our best sellers are in German for Tolino, but we do see a lot of sales of English language books. So another way that you can make money on your book is to get it translated. There's a couple of different ways to do this. It's kind of like dealing with an audiobook. You can pay up front, so you can find a translator and pay them up front for the work. That does get a little bit complicated with some German laws, so talk to other authors, look into it. But you can get books translated with just hiring someone on. Make sure you have someone else who can read the language, edit, make sure that they do a good job. There are services like we work with a company called BabbleCube that kind of does similar to what Audible does, where you can enter into an agreement with the company, and if they find a translator who wants to, they can translate your book, and then they retain rights to it for, I believe, 5 years. It might be a little bit longer than that. They sell it, and then you get the rights revert back to you entirely after that period. So it kind of splits the risk. You don't have to pay up front, but you can get your work translated, and then they take a little bit of chance, and it might pay off really well for them. It's just kind of a split of the royalties. Another option you have, and I believe there's a couple of other indie Recon talks that talk a little bit about this, is that you can sell your rights to certain countries. I've worked with several of our partner authors who have sold the rights to something like a bestseller in America to an Italian publishing company or to a German company or Spanish. That has some advantages in that those are probably, it's not a market you were focused on, and them being native to the country, they're more likely to know exactly how to advertise your book, and so that's a great option. It's unless you're already selling really great in the country, if you get those offers, really look into them and make sure the legal contract is good. But that's probably the best opportunity you have to sell your book in that country. So one big part of this whole going international is that you really need to pay attention to where your sales are. When you get your final numbers at the end of the month, they have like your royalty statement and everything on them. Look and see where am I selling my book? Is my book doing really, really well in Australia? Because that's going to kind of give you an idea of how you should spend some of your marketing time or efforts, you can look into, uh, are there opportunities in that country for me to advertise and find more readers? One thing I like to tell authors about is there's a tool called App Annie. You can get to at appannie.com. They're primarily known for helping app developers look into their app sales, like analytics, um, for smartphones and tablets and everything like that. However, they do have a beta service for books that tracks both the Kindle stores and the iBook stores. I like to use it a lot for the iBook stores because I can use it to find out where a book is featured, how it's ranking in different countries. Like, it gives me a good view of where a book is doing well. There's been times where we've had a book that was hitting our outliers chart every day, but I wasn't seeing it in the top 10 at the Apple store. I was kind of confused. Not the Apple store, the iBook store. Turns out it was selling like crazy in Australia and not selling much at all in America. So that was great information to have, and then it also gave me an opportunity to talk to our marketing promotion reps at Apple and say, hey, can we get this featured on the U.S. bookstore? Because it's doing so well in Australia, and turns out it did do very, very well in America too, just once we got more eyes on it. A great, one thing to know about the iBook store is that each of the separate countries' iBook stores is completely different. It's separate. Their marketing, promotions, and everything are different. Some of the promotions overlap between different bookstores. Frequently, their special promotions will happen on the U.S. bookstore, the Australian, most of the English-speaking countries, UK, Ireland, etc. You can actually, in iTunes or iBooks, depending on, it's iTunes for PC, and I think it's called iBooks on the Mac now. Down at the very bottom right-hand corner, you can click on the little globe. If you're in America, it's got like an American flag kind of draped over it. And that will let you change the country that you're looking at, the iBook store, so you can look and see what it looks like on the Australian book site, what it looks like on the British, any of their 51 territories. So that's kind of a neat thing to know about. It's very useful. Apple does have different marketing and promotion people working those different sites who are, know that market. And so we also started working a lot with them to try to get books promoted. We've gotten books promoted in Canada, in Australia, UK. So it's some neat opportunities. Another thing I use a lot is Chrome, the browser, internet browser. If you right click, they've got a translate option. And so, if you're going over to, looking at one of the Selena websites, I don't speak German, so it's very, very helpful for me to be able to translate that and kind of see, helps me navigate through the website, get an idea for, this is how my book is laid out, this is how they sell books, essentially. So that's something, kind of a neat little tip to know. With Barnes & Noble, you can just go directly, nook.com /GB will get you to their UK website. It is handled separately from the US site, and so it's good to be able to look and see. You can check on if your price is right there, etc. Kobo is interesting because they look at where your internet connection is coming from. So what IP address that they receive from your browser, they will redirect you to the country-specific Kobo store. That's great most of the time, but sometimes as an author, you want to check and say, hey, how does this look on the UK website, or is my price right? Well, you really can't do that. So for the more technically savvy people, one thing that we do, when we're checking on things like that, is we use proxies. You can Google proxy, look for a proxy that will make it seem like you're coming from the country that you're wanting to check. And so that's the way you kind of check for Kobo. Again, it's pretty technically, yeah, it's a technical thing. It's doable. I like to let people know about it, but uh, let's just hope you never have to. I encourage you to look for opportunities to promote to international audiences. Uh, there are already a couple of promotional tools, like BookPub just recently added the UK as one of their options in their sale-based promotions. So I encourage you to go ahead and take advantage of that and include your book uh, going out to the UK. I believe it costs a little bit extra, but I think you'll find it's probably going to be worth it for you. There's a company called ebook Soda that is similar to does a similar thing to BookBub. They're focused and based on the UK, I believe, and so that's kind of where they're aiming at. Ebook Bargains UK. They have both a newsletter to feature books, and their blog is really, really good for just keeping track of international market news. I followed it for a while. They also have an email newsletter you can subscribe to just to hear about international news. And like I mentioned before, all of the different websites have the international site has different promotion people, and so it gives you different opportunities. Reach out to whoever handles promotions for your you know your distributor. For Drafted Digital, you can reach out to me at authorrelations@drafteddigital.com. Um, I like to know, if you're an Australian author, let us know. We try to make sure that Apple is aware of that. We try to make sure Kobo is aware of that, because they do look for people who, they like to feature books that are from authors that are in that territory. And so, those are some really cool opportunities, and so we try to find those for our author partners. Kind of the last question about international markets is, when should I go international? Imagine for a lot of indie authors, you're already in a lot of these different bookstores I'm talking about. Maybe not some of the smaller ones, but or you're in the Kindle Select, which is exclusive to Amazon. I would really, really encourage you. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased in this, but to look at going wide, both in going outside of the exclusivity. I never can say that word, of Amazon Select, but trying to get your book out there in as many countries as possible. And I think the time really is about right now. I say that because I see a lot of authors starting to do, they're deciding to come out of Kindle Select and the KU program. The sooner you do it, I see a lot of people do it and they're like, oh my goodness, my sales have dropped. I've been wide for 2 weeks and nothing's selling. Well, keep in mind that you're having to build up an entirely new audience. Like, these are completely different people who've never seen your book before. In advertising, brand recognition is huge, and like every time someone sees your product, the impression kind of lasts with them, and they're much more likely to buy your book, not the first time they see it, but like the fifth or sixth time they've seen it. And so I highly encourage you, get your books out there. You can't just release like one book and put your toes in the water. You really want to go with something like a series, put it out there, leave it out there for a little bit, and work at it. Make sure you're including links on your blog, in your email newsletter, to all of the retailers, or maybe even focus in on one specific one. What I tend to find is when people are doing really, really well at Amazon and not anywhere else, is because all of their marketing efforts are telling people to go to Amazon. There's a whole lot of opportunities, and especially since most of the other bookstores have fewer books, especially fewer indie books, there's a lot of opportunity for indie authors right now to get exposure to a whole new set of readers. Anyway, I really enjoyed getting to talk to everyone from Recon. I will be doing a version of this talk at Romance Writers America. So if you happen to be attending that conference, would love for you to come out. Um, I think maybe Book Expo America. We're working on all the details on that, but it should be a good talk where we'll have Mark Lefebvre from Kobo with us as well, and we are learning a little bit of I, the international thing is new to us too, and so we are learning a lot like every month. Just as we get more information, as we get more sales from Tolino, as we start to delve into the different international stores of our current partners, we're learning a whole lot. And so, thank you for listening. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Have a great rest of the Indie Recon week. Thanks. Bye.